This edition of FedGov Today with Francis Rose is sponsored by Accenture Federal Services. On this edition of FedGov Today with Francis Rose, the call to the cloud for the Commerce Department. CIO Mendes is here, hitting the HR sweet spots as your team comes back to the office. And Customs and Border Protection bears down on some big tech goals. CBP CIO Sonny Bhagowalia will explain. Welcome to FedGov Today with Francis Rose. The Chief Information Officer at the Commerce Department says 4 things should be at the top of priority lists of CIOs. Those 4 items are consolidate, virtualize, co-locate, and cloud. Mendes is the CIO at the Commerce Department. Andre, it's great to see you. Thanks for joining me today. You said those things recently, and you're living them out too. We talked a little bit before we went on the air about the fact that you have some big cloud deployments coming very soon at the Commerce Department. Tell me what's happening in the cloud at Commerce.
Sure. So at the beginning of the fiscal year, we are going to be moving into a one instance, all of Commerce financial system. And that will replace 3 different systems that have served different bureaus and that were in our data centers. So we are going straight into the cloud and basically unifying the department around one system with all of the protocols and standards and that will enable us to move far more efficiently. It is also a far more modern system that will have much better reporting capabilities, which will allow for much more accurate decision making and fast decision making when it comes to all of the financial transactions and allocations.
Is that a platform that you're building, or is that a platform that you're adopting through something that already existed in some other place?
It is a standard platform that is being hosted in the cloud. But it is being used as a software as a service, so we have nothing to do with the actual, operation of the environment itself. At the same time, we're also moving into a Quizmo provider for our grants management systems and unifying all of the grants management systems at the Department of Commerce into one instance provided by HHS's ERA project, which we decided upon after a very substantial analysis of the fit gap that really identified it as being the optimum solution for commerce. And so those are going to be launched at the same time because they're highly dependent, and of course that is always some trepidation. Yeah. But we believe that we've done all of the right work to get them done and get them launched successfully at the beginning of the fiscal year.
What did you look at as far as the QSMO at HHS to determine that it was going to be at least adaptable for what you do at Commerce?
Just the overall set of capabilities that it provides in the grant arena. Now, there are some features that we needed and that they've already been sort of customized. But in this particular case, that customization means that it becomes a part of the platform itself rather than having a code branch. And I think that that is a very good philosophical decision. And going forward, there are other grant types that require very specific handling. For example, construction grants, which this particular solution does not have yet, but that they will customize and then may become a part of their standard offering. So I think it's a great win-win for both the Department of Commerce not having different code bases, not having to worry about upgrade cycles that are off of the standard that the Quizmo provider is going to be implementing, and at the same time the Quizmo provider is gaining additional functionality that will now benefit the whole of government. So I think altogether it's a very, very well thought out strategy.
If I recall correctly, you've got, I think, a dozen bureaus and components inside the Commerce Department. What's that consolidation process like to bring all of those stakeholders on board to move to 2 systems like you're describing? Andre?
It's a complex environment. It's a complex environment because not only are there 13 different bureaus, but they're also, radically different in their missions. And also radically different in their sizes. And so the needs vary dramatically. From NOAA, that has a very massive installation with literally thousands upon thousands of employees and geographically very dispersed, to organizations that live entirely inside of the HCHB building that have a much smaller mandate, so to speak, although an important one, of course, and a much smaller number of people, transactions, and all of the complexities that come with the implementation of a system like this.
My apologies to whichever one of the 13 I'd left out when I was thinking about the components inside the agency. When you push the button October 1st, what happens next? What do you do to make sure that you've got this running in the way that you want it? What's the follow-on to a project like this?
So we've gone through an extensive testing environment and also UAT, user acceptance testing, and so we're very confident that we've unearthed any and all of the problems. Well, I don't want to say any and all.
Sure.
Most of the problems. But we are also moving into a hypercare type of environment where we have all hands on deck to deal with any things that come up, that crop up, that might give us some difficulties. In this type of launch, when you're talking about replacing a decades-old system with a new system, and everybody has to be trained into the new environment, again, there's always some trepidation, and nobody expects it to be 100% perfect, right? But what we will see, I'm hoping, is a set of wavelets of trouble that continue to get smaller and smaller and smaller, like a pebble in a lake as it reaches the shore. And I think that that's what's going to happen. Nobody is going to be overreacting too much. We're going to tackle the problems and get them done. And so, and of course, in a financial system, one good thing is nobody dies, right?
One of the things that strikes me about a transition like this is this touches all of the other stakeholders that are at the table at your, in your CXO organization. What's this transition been like regarding your interactions with the procurement office and acquisition, financial management and budgeting, HR and so on?
So interestingly enough, these systems, the financial systems, were run out of the CFO shop that has a relatively small IT system environment. And so they have basically been driving the entire process. We've made sure that we did all of the due diligence from a cybersecurity standpoint, from an ATO standpoint, all of that. But we've been working hand in glove, for 3 years now. And I can say the collaboration has been nothing short of spectacular. The same is true with the acquisitions shop, where they have been, part and parcel of the entire effort. And also HR and privacy, all of the areas that at the end of the day are affected by a financial system or a grant system. Mm-hmm. As we move into a software as a service environment, that relationship is going to change a little bit, but not much. I mean, the CFO is still going to be in charge of the programmatic changes needed. As regulations change or they evolve, and we will be making sure that the back end is secure so that it fits into our zero trust architecture, which has been thought into this process from the get-go, and into our ICAM environment and everything else. And so I'm very confident that that relationship will only get better as we eliminate some of the complexity of the old system that required an enormous amount of work with upgrades and technology stack alignment and everything else, which effectively has done away with the use of a software as a service environment.
You talked about data at the beginning of this conversation. What's the data that this new system, that this new setup will yield to help you make the better decisions that you talked about? So,
in terms of where you stand from a financial standpoint, when you're using a system that is 2-3 decades old, there is always a substantial lag between the data that is available for consumption for quick analysis and then the reality on the ground. And so what we see is people always having their own little systems, even sometimes down to in the small organizations, to Excel spreadsheets, so they can keep exact track of how much money they spent, how much money they have left. I believe that all of that will go away because the system of record, with this implementation is going to be far more accessible with an enormous amount of pre-programmed reports, including visualizations, and so I think that the complexity of the environment will be radically diminished, while at the same time the accuracy of the data that it comes across and the transportability of the data when you're doing cross-bureau analysis will become spectacularly better.
I mentioned, we have about a minute left, Andre. I mentioned those 4 things that you advised your fellow CIOs to focus on recently: consolidate, virtualize, co-locate, and cloud. How'd you decide that those 4 are the big 4 for CIOs right now?
So, it's actually, here's the funny thing, Francis. I first utilized those 4 back in 2012 when I was at my old agency, and we decided that we were going to go to the cloud. And so that entire exercise needed to start, even maybe a little earlier than those 4, with the cataloging of the systems, because one of the untold stories with a lot of agencies, especially small agencies, is that there are a lot of systems that are not well cataloged and documented, but exist nevertheless, sometimes even under somebody's desk.
Yep.
And so you need to make sure that you do that. And then you need to make sure that you consolidate them. All right, so that you know what you are migrating. And then, of course, the virtualization is a tremendous help because you can get rid of an enormous amount of hardware and start consolidating. And the tools in consolidation are so adept at migration across geographic distance, right? Just utilizing IP technology and the different stacks in different places, that it makes absolute sense to go to that virtualization before you get into the cloud, because moving from your data center to the cloud becomes a matter of moving VMs, and that is a lot easier than anything else.
Andre, it's great to see you as always. Thanks very much for
Always
your
a
time
pleasure,
today.
Francis. Always a pleasure.
You can read more about all the topics Andre and I discussed at fedgovtoday.com. Up next, hitting the HR sweet spots as your team comes back to the office. FedGov Today with Francis Rose continues in a moment.
For public sector organizations in today's hybrid world, every click can make a difference. Mission success depends on flawless, secure execution. And when response time is everything, milliseconds matter. Now you can harness full fidelity data to surface actionable insights, connect the dots, eliminate blind spots, and enable end-to-end visibility. That's the power of unified observability from Alluvio by Riverbed.
Welcome back. The White House is asking agencies to, quote, aggressively execute back to office strategies this fall. President Biden's chief of staff, former deputy director for management at OMB, Jeffrey Zients, calls in-person work, quote, critical to the well-being of our teams. Britaini Carroll is Federal Human Capital Practice Lead at Accenture Federal Services. Britaini, welcome. Thanks for coming on the program. What should leaders in government be thinking about as they're coming back to the office intensely and they're bringing their people back to the office after Labor Day, according to the terms of this memo?
Thanks, Francis. It's great to be here. There's so many different emotions going on with this across the agencies as humans. And so I think there are different perspectives people need to keep in mind. Being purposeful. Most of our federal agencies and all of the federal government employees that I'm working with, they're really passionate about their mission, right? It's purposeful. We see that in the FEVS scores that come back. It's very strong. And so they're really just looking for the environment in which they can have the most impact on the outcomes and the mission goals that they're trying to achieve. So what we need leaders to think about as employees come back is, what is that environment for them? And it may look different depending on the type of work that they're doing. Mm-hmm. So that is the most important thing, and not just assume it's one size fits all. That's gone. People have become very comfortable in the different ways that they can become more efficient in what they're doing and more productive. And so listening to the employees in order to hear that, because again, empowering them to be able to provide that outcome that they're really aligned to, especially now as we come in the last year of this administration, is super important to meet those goals.
You've got 4 big concepts that you're advising, 4 big themes that you're telling folks to pay attention to as they bring their people back to the office. You mentioned purposeful, augmented, flexible, and truly human. What's augmented mean? Is that technologically based, or is there something else behind that?
Yeah, it is technology. So for a lot of people right now, right, you can't go anywhere with Gen AI. I appreciate the previous CIO not bringing up Gen AI because there's a lot of other technologies in the stacks out there. Cloud is front and center. Cloud is a machine. Cloud is augmenting humans. So if you talk about, as they're going for their October 1st, there are a lot of employees that have worked on those systems for the past 10, 20 years. Their work is going to change. So they're going to be augmented by technology. federal employees realize it's not replacing them, it's making their job easier. There aren't enough people in the federal workforce, and so having technologies that can support that, may that be AI, ML, may that be the RPA, may it just be automation of existing processes, being in the cloud, being co-located, being virtualized, and not being on actual older system that is, being held up. So that is a really important aspect of just also communicating that augmentation, that this is human and machine. That's what's going to unlock the human potential. So agencies need to start talking about that. They're practicing it. We see a lot of AI work groups coming together, but we really need them to start talking to the workforce about that, because they are a little afraid. What are you doing? So be transparent. So when you come back and you have new technologies and you're testing things out, bring in the workforce that's impacted by that. They'll have great ideas. So listen to the workforce when it comes to that and how they might use this augmented technology to help them. This is not new. We've been doing that for at least 10 years. Certainly I started in 2016 with cloud at one of the civilian federal agencies. And we skilled people up in these technologies and helped them come up with ideas of, well, how might they use this?
The last item on this list is truly human. What's behind that one? Because it doesn't sound like something easy to wrap your head around right away, I guess.
Yeah, so they're humans at work. Things have changed in the past 4 or 5 years since the pandemic, and people have realized they need more. The employee voice has become stronger, and they want to be heard and recognized for their whole self. So it's no longer just the employer saying, hey, here are terms and conditions, and they turn around and say, okay, I guess I'll take this job. Rather, we're now at a place where employees have some requests. They want continuous learning. They want to feel a sense of belonging. They don't just want to come back into the office and then sit on their computer and dial into a Zoom call or a Teams call or whatever technology people are using. Great, but that's not a sense of belonging. How do you create that sense of community? So I think really focusing on that sense of belonging, both from talent acquisition, looking out a little bit further of how are we providing inclusive opportunities for people who are wanting to come in and have jobs. So that relational aspect, so where you're bringing people back in the office, how are you going to build more relationships? It's a true community. People have created a sense of community at home now with their neighbors by force or by will. They're looking for that in the workplace as well. And so it's not okay to just have the same old work group come together and have bagels on Fridays. You're really going to have to rethink how that's going to work for people to want to come in.
Britaini, it's great to have you. It's great insight. Thanks very much for joining me.
Thanks so much, Francis.
Appreciate it. You can read more at fedgovtoday.com. Up next, Customs and Border Protection bears down on some big tech goals. CBP CIO Sonny Bhagowalia is here when FedGov Today with Francis Rose continues in a moment. If you want insights from agency and industry leaders on the latest topics in technology, management, workforce, defense, and acquisition, sign up for the FedGov Today podcast with me, Francis Rose. I release new episodes every Tuesday and Thursday, so you'll stay up to date on the issues that matter most to federal government leaders. Listen at fedgovtoday.com and everywhere you get your shows. Don't miss out on the conversation. Follow the podcast today. Welcome back. Customs and Border Protection has a 70% goal to hit by the end of September. That's the percentage of its applications it has targeted to be in the cloud by the end of fiscal 2023. Sonny Bhagowalia is Chief Information Officer at Customs and Border Protection. Sonny, it's great to see you. Thanks for coming on the program. Where are you in that transition, not just for the rest of this fiscal year, but long term to move applications to the cloud?
Yeah, good afternoon, Francis, and great to be here. And we're overachievers at CBP, so I'm just happy to report that we're already at 73% of 277 apps into the cloud for the entire portfolio, one of the largest civilian agencies with that kind of a success already into the cloud. And I think we're going to hit 75% by the end of the fiscal year. So that's quite amazing. So now what we have left is just the remaining 25%, and we'd like to get out of the our Tier 4 data center, Tier 5 being sort of a world-class, Amazon, those kind of centers. But we have a Tier 4 data center that's done us really well, and we intend to be out of there by calendar year 2025, with just one caveat, that we get the funding to move some of these high-value assets into the cloud. So exciting progress and really good work on behalf of the team.
What are some of the things that you've done in the time that you've been there, or that the team did that preceded you, that set you up for the success that you are having right now?
I think first of all, I think some leadership, of course, but there's a commitment. I was there when Vivek Kundra, if you remember him.
Yes, of course.
when I was Department of Interior CIO, and at that time, my night job, he said, hey, listen, I got this thing on data.gov, and do you mind also helping on this cloud thing? And so, it was a great idea, and I was just wondering what cloud he's talking about. But once I found out, cloud computing, since then has been, first slow in the adoption, but now it's really taken off. Mm-hmm. So he was years ahead of his time. And I think CBP is all in terms of, getting our mission done faster, better, more affordably, and more securely. So I think the key thing is that, and it's more affordably, not just cheaper. So more affordably is the key. Our mission, of course, as you know, is a 24/7 mission of protecting the American people, safeguarding our borders, and enhancing the nation's prosperity. That's a pretty wide, big mission. Mm-hmm. So CBP OIT has to provide that same thing with IT products and services that meet anywhere, anytime, for any mission on any authorized device securely and reliably. So with that in mind, cloud is a very key thing for us, and cloud allows us to really make sure that all the apps that we deploy stay up and are more secure, and obviously most importantly, provide our frontline agents and officers everything that they need to do their mission.
Interesting distinction that you just made. More affordably, not cheaper. What's the difference in the context of a federal government agency?
It's an important, I think with Andre and everyone else, all of us CIOs, we've never said that cloud is cheaper, because there's a total cost of ownership. Remember that?
Yeah.
And so the total cost of ownership is just the fact that so much has changed in our world. There's high definition video coming in. There's more data coming in to any mobile device, the Internet of Things. So there's so much more growth of everything that the amount of data that's processing through our network is massive. We process almost 175 petabytes of information a day on CBP alone.
Yeah.
That's massive for any agency. So just the fact that that kind of network is going across, it's just that it's a pay-as-you-go utility, and the outlay is lower at the time, but overall at the total cost of ownership it may be the same, maybe just a little bit more, but the benefits you accrue over time is mission delivery, faster, mm-hmm. better, and of course more securely as well. So I think that's been a tremendous thing for us, boon for us, and we have done this in our missions, and I think that has really come true.
I count 2 as the number of times so far you've said more securely. I had the over-under at 4 before this began. What are you doing in the cloud to make sure that it is secure, that these apps are secure, the data is secure as you're making these transitions?
That's a great question. I think you're channeling my commissioner as well. I think the main thing is, since I came to CBP, and my background from various 5 CIO positions and also department and other levels, I will say that the challenge is that the attack surface in terms of frequency, in terms of volume, in terms of impact or just sheer brazenness, I guess, has been quite amazing from our adversaries. We have to play by the rules, they don't. So I think from that standpoint, security is absolutely paramount. It needs to sort of go throughout the process and built in as opposed to bolt on. So we have been working very carefully to have data at rest encryption, to have continuous monitoring, to make sure that some of our apps have security built in terms of how we look at interfacing with the architecture. For example, people talk about APIs, right? API is very convenient, and you talk about API gateways, application programming interface gateways. Well, we are trying to also make sure that the security of that is built in. So my point is, there is all of that going in, and on top of that, we're doing zero trust. Mm-hmm. We are an agency that is, I'm happy to report that this fiscal year, we'll be 15,000 of our users will be completely zero trust enabled through the virtual private network and so on and so forth, and we intend to by 24 to go through all of that. Also, most of our applications are having that sort of a mindset into that framework. And I think finally just say that it's just you have a Watch the Watchers program as well. So not only you have insider threat, we're tracking from outside and inside But it's a full-time job. You know, a long time ago I had black hair, and look what happened. You know, I'm now got gray hair.
It's been a while, Sonny. I've known you a long time. I don't remember black hair. But the CISO at DHS HQ,
Yes.
Ken Bible, was on the program
Yes,
a couple of
yes,
weeks
yes,
ago.
yes,
The
yes.
CIO, Eric Heisen, will be on the show in a couple of weeks.
Yep.
What's that relationship like from the component level? Ken talked a lot about what he's doing to work with all the components across the agency on security, cybersecurity in particular. What does it look like from your view?
I think having been a department CIO twice and also a component CIO, I can just say that, you know, the one thing that I espouse is we're in the same boat, and we're in the same boat together. And we don't say, hey, I'm glad the hole is at the other end of the boat, right? We work together. The leadership from CIO Heisen and CISO Ken Bible has been excellent. We work together and commiserate on many issues, but we also discuss what are some of the challenges. As a component, we are seeing on the front lines just tremendous amount of volume that is, you know, we're the largest component. And I'd say one of the more advanced components, or if not the most advanced, but the point is we're not, you know, sort of taking anything for granted. We're always apprehensive and you know, looking at all aspects of security. And so I think that relationship and teamwork and cooperation is very important. And I've never seen more need for that today. And I think we're learning from each other in terms of even binding operational directives, whatever's coming from the White House through DHS, we're already on top of that. But there's a lot going on in cyber, and I think the zero trust is the right approach, and I applaud the leadership for bringing that to the fore.
About a minute left, Sonny. You said you plan on having all applications in the cloud by calendar year 2025, given funding. Is that the marker of success, or are there other markers of success in your transition to the cloud?
Yeah, that's one of the markers, I think, but all our applications that have been in the cloud have been very reliable, touch wood, have worked really better, and so we can deploy faster. I've got 240 teams, 240, agile teams that develop software and deliver incrementally in every 2 weeks or as need be. In Operation Allies Welcome with Afghanistan, we were delivering almost you know, within days because of the urgency of the situation. So my point is the cloud facilitates that. We're also processing 1 million people a day in terms of through our ports of entry, 328 ports of entry. So my point is that all of this stuff really matters in terms of making sure that what's manifesting is faster, better, more affordably, and more securely. We're still making sure that in each one of these we deep dive a little bit more, track some metrics and outcomes, and I think that's what's really the proof of the pudding.
Sonny Bhagowalia,
yep.
Show your
book. And this is at the CBP.gov. We are an open and transparent and accountable organization. We have published all our year-end review reports, and everything is coming out by fiscal year, so you can see everything that's going on, and we encourage everyone to read it and work with us for successful outcomes.
When will we get the one for fiscal 23, which wraps in a couple of weeks?
Just in a month or so.
Excellent turnaround. It's great to see you, Sonny.
Thank you.
You can read more about all those initiatives at CBP and find a link to Sonny's book at fedgovtoday.com. FedGov Today with Francis Rose is back in a moment. If you want insights from agency and industry leaders on the latest topics in technology, management, workforce, defense, and acquisition, sign up for the FedGov Today podcast with me, Francis Rose. I release new episodes every Tuesday and Thursday, so you'll stay up to date on the issues that matter most to federal government leaders. Listen at fedgovtoday.com and everywhere you get your shows. Don't miss out on the conversation. Follow the podcast today. Welcome back. In today's event spotlight, GAIN 2023, the premier government marketing conference, is coming October 17th to the Ritz-Carlton in Tyson's Corner. Government Marketing University's GAIN conference will host the leading minds in marketing to the federal government. I'll see you there to kick off the conference the morning of October 17th. You can find a link to read more about it and register on the events page at fedgovtoday.com. FedGov Today with Francis Rose returns next Sunday morning at 10:30. Thanks very much for watching. See you next Sunday. Have a great week.